When I was like 8 or 9, I would come downstairs early and watch TV. One night, I was walking down the stairs and heard a little laugh, and I thought it was my sister. I walked down a few more steps and look around the corner. No lights on, not the TV, and she's not there either. A few seconds later, a little girl, the suspected ghost, runs by giggling, holding a stuffed animal and something I don't see in the other hand. She runs from the living room into the kitchen and disappears along with the giggling. She was wearing an old-style dress and curlyish hair. It's not a dead person in the house. My great-grandparents had this house built, and nobody has ever died inside it, or the neighbors' houses as far as I know. I've been keeping this to myself for a few years now, because I've never seen much else in the house. But does anyone know why I saw that, or is it just a ghost? The house was built in 1922, unsure exactly of all of its past history. When I was little, I had oftentimes had these dreams where I would wander through my house in the middle of the night, trying to find something or perhaps someone. The dream would always end when I find the tall, dark figure, nothing but a silhouette standing in the middle of my kitchen, exposed by the overhead light over the kitchen sink that hadn't even worked for years before. It was always on in that dream, though. I would wake up sometimes hearing these voices, not angry or of any emotional, but usually just 2 to 3 voices talking mid-sentence of audible English words that were distinguishable, but didn't make sense of much really. Sometimes I would even wake up frozen, like I couldn't breathe or move, but simply lay there with my eyes wide open for a few seconds, while still hearing the voices speak briefly. My mother has always experienced things as well as my older sister. My mom hearing a jingle, eerie coming from the back of the refrigerator or maybe the pantry late at night sometimes. Things would turn on or off. The year was 2001. I was just 8 years old. And one night, my mom woke up to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. She was frozen in her steps in the hall when greeted by a deep, hollow, and loud voice right in front of her. That of a man, say slowly and forced out, "Don't worry, everything will be all right." Turned on the lights and looked around and saw nothing. It was a snowy night when she took a look outside. No fresh footsteps were ever seen around the home. She woke up my dad to go investigate the voice, but my dad didn't believe in ghosts or anything of the sort. He came into my room and grabbed my wooden baseball bat, and it woke me up. I worried for my dad and what was happening and wanted to go downstairs. I hadn't heard the voice in the hall. I just stayed awake and listened, but eventually fallen back to sleep. I only heard of this story later on when I was older, and had finally knew why my dad came in for my bat. My dad found nothing out of the ordinary, and my mom's father had passed away that previous year of a heart attack, and my dad's mother was suffering and dying of cancer at the time. My mom seems to think that the message was in reference to those events. Fast forward to 2018, my parents are divorced, and the house has been vacant for 2 to 3 years now, just to be heated during the winter months. My wife and I decided to move in to rent from my dad since we are tired of the apartment living. The first night I moved in and was unpacking, I immediately felt a strong presence and didn't feel like being there, almost like unwelcoming and being watched. I couldn't shake the feeling as my wife was working overnights at the coffee shop and I was alone. The next day is when it started to happen again. I got up from my morning shift at 4:30 a.m. and was brushing my teeth just in the other room. My wife woke up to a voice that said, "Earl." She asked me if I had said it, I, in fact, didn't. I was brushing my teeth at the time. I thought to myself, here we go again, but I didn't tell her that. The next morning, my wife was wide awake watching Netflix on her phone. 4:15 a.m. comes around. I snoozed the phone. Not long after, we hear this bizarre jingle at the foot of the bed for like 8 to 10 seconds. It was long enough for her to shake me and say my name, and I still heard it after waking up. It kind of reminded me of Take Me Out to the Ball Game from one of those little teddy bears or something. So terrified, we both threw the lights on and searched the room. There was nothing but boxes of clothes in our room and nothing that could have possibly made that sound. We got the house blessed the next day, and we hadn't experienced anything far out after that. Occasionally a light would work itself on, or the stove range fan would turn on by itself. It didn't work when we tried it. There was also another time where me and my wife were both standing right next to each other, and I was getting a phone call from her cell phone. But she was not using her phone, and it didn't even show she was calling me. I was too afraid to pick it up, but sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I did pick it up. Later on, we got a new home and my sister moved in, and one night had experienced a disembodied voice at the end of our bed, just whistling the tune to the TV show she had just finished watching. She also taken videos and seen several orbs just floating around. I just asked her the other day if she's experienced anything lately. She says that she doesn't anymore. Her and her boyfriend are in a good and happy place in life at the moment, and she seems to think that could be why she isn't experiencing weird things anymore. She also told me she thought that the house was some sort of portal where many spirits would come through. I'm not sure what to think or believe. But after me and my wife both hearing the hymn, it definitely must be something. Have any of these events ever happened to you? What do they all mean? Every time I sleep over at my father's house, I wake up with a headache, and every time I close a door, it locks, and I do not lock the door. The title basically, could this be due to ghost or paranormal activity? I'm just curious if anyone else experienced this, and it was due to ghost or spirit. I always get a bad energy from my father's home too. I'm 18 female, by the way. Edit. He does not lock the doors. They lock on the inside. Plus, they have turn locks. When I do not touch them, they lock. He even yells at me about locking the door when I didn't. Plus, we have a pretty toxic relationship. He causes me stress and anxiety and most problems in my life, he believes are my fault. I live in a house that used to belong to an old lady who died a long time ago in a retirement home because she had to leave our future home. The first experience was in my house. I was in the hallway going to the toilet when I was about 9 to 10 years old, and I see a purple shape as if it was a curtain. We don't have curtains in our hallway, and it was swinging. It could be a vision I imagined. It could be something I imagined when I was a kid, but I don't know. The second time, I was in my room in my bed. I was trying to find a comfortable position for me to sleep, and I heard a whisper saying my name. I was like 10 years old. It could be an auditory vision. These two experiences I had are in my house, and the last thing that happened was at the beach house with some old friends. And as for the first experience, it was the night I wanted to go to the toilet. I was in a hallway, and I see a person in the shadows sitting there. He didn't talk. I was forced to go where he was, because the toilet was in that hallway. I pass, and then nothing. He didn't say anything. He had his head down too. And when I came back to go to bed, he was always there, just saying nothing. And the next morning, I no longer saw the shadow. Tell me what you think about it. Hallucinating? Or having auditory delusions? Or is this ghosts? First time posting. I have experienced quite a bit of paranormal business. I even started a podcast to share all of this on and discuss other people's experiences as well. Last episode, I shared how my dog's behavior in my apartment is a bit off. Day to day, she's fine, but there will be times she just sits in front of my giant mirror and stares at herself. Or at least I hope she's staring at herself. Sometimes she'll growl at her reflection. When she does this, it gets creepy. I know mirrors can be portals, and I have some big-ass mirrors. Aside from growling at her own reflection, she's even growled at the foot of my bed into nothingness. One of the nights this happened, I also heard a woman's voice call my name from the same area she was growling at. I have 2 dogs. My other dog usually backs her up when she growls at nothing, but doesn't join in when it's the mirror. I've lived in haunted apartments, and I forsake wouldn't classify this place as that. However, my dog is constantly on alert and can see and feel what I can't. I've been bothered by this for a while. I've had it happen twice where I got 3 knocks on the door. The first time I was in my bedroom. No one was home. The dog was in the room with me and started barking. I said, "Come in," but no one came in. I got up and searched the entire house and no one was there. I moved to a new house a few years later. The second time it happened to me, I was sitting at the table with a friend in a different house than before. At the time, I had a TV screen connected to a camera to where I could see my front door and a good amount of area around it. This was just before all these modern motion detection cameras. It wasn't the best neighborhood. We are sitting there and we hear 3 loud knocks really fast. It sounded like somebody hitting a door with a baseball bat, but somewhat fast 3 times. There was no one there. All of a sudden, the baseball bat that I kept by my door flew across the room and rolled to a stop. It was a fairly large room too, so it flew maybe 10 feet, and right after, her pellet gun had fell off the top shelf. This wasn't the only occurrences. I had also heard running across the roof multiple times. I had a box sitting at the top of the stairs. I heard a strange muffling, shuffling noise in the box, and it spilled down the stairs and crashed to the bottom. No one was up there, and no lights were on. My dog would cry for no reason, in a very strange way. And also, one of my doors seemingly opened on its own. Long scratching sounds on the interior walls that didn't sound like a little mouse scratching motion. For me, I just want to know if anybody has ever heard of the 3 knocks and what it means. It still bothers me. Hello. I would like to know why some ghost entities attract yourself to people who notice them, unlike other ghost entities who quickly disappear before they don't want to be noticed. Why don't they pick on, bother, annoy, reveal themselves to those other people who don't notice the paranormal occurrences and who are more skeptic? Is it because you have its attention or something? Were they sent by someone to torment you? I'm just asking. Way back in 2002, I was living in a small studio flat apartment in Whalley Range, Manchester, UK. For those who are unfamiliar with a studio flat, it's a small apartment with just a bedroom, living room, and kitchen, all in one open room with a small bedroom by itself. It's where you live when you're not quite poor enough to be homeless. At the time, I was working at a restaurant as a barman and didn't get home until pretty late, around midnight. One evening I came home from work and went to bed. Shortly after, I heard the noise in the kitchen, 2 minutes from my bed, which sounded like somebody walking around. My first thought was that someone had broken into my flat whilst I was out, then hid when I came home and waited until I fell asleep before trying to sneak out. I jumped out of bed ready to wrestle a crackhead, but no one was there. I searched everywhere, which didn't take long considering how small my shitty apartment was, and went back to bed, but left a lamp on. The same noises started again almost instantly. This time, however, I could clearly hear the sound of footsteps, leather shoes on the kitchen lino floor. Because I knew there was nobody in the apartment, I became almost paralyzed with fear. It's hard to describe because it's not fear in a conventional sense, but fear of something unknown. The footsteps got closer and closer until the floorboard, in line with my pillow, loudly creaked. Whatever it was standing right behind me, and that's when I heard it breathing. Its breath was loud and labored, as if it was struggling to breathe. At this point, I was as terrified as I have ever been in my life, but decided to turn around and look. I knew this may be the only chance to see something extraordinary. So very slowly, I peeked over my shoulder and saw it. It looked like a shadow, not a two-dimensional shadow cast on an object, but a three-dimensional one in the middle of the room. Some of it wasn't visible from the shoulders up, and from the knees down it had faded away, but in the area in between I could clearly make out a back with arms and hands swing gently at its sides. I could also see the upper legs moving. It was slowly walking away from me and continued to do so until I reached a window and faded away completely. Until it reached a window and faded away completely. I didn't sleep that night thinking about what I had seen and if it would ever come back. It didn't. Even now, some nights I lie awake wondering if I had actually seen a ghost. I'd been interested in to hear from anyone else who thinks they've seen a ghost to see if their description is similar to mine. Let me set up the scene. My roommate and I decided to visit my mom a couple holidays ago. I know this guy really well, and we are great friends even to this day. When we visited, we stayed in my room, which has a window that can directly look into my mom's living room. We did the usual things and stayed up talking, listening to music, and had a great time. At about 1:30 a.m., we decided it was time to turn in. I had my 2 dogs sleeping with us at our feet. For some reason, I wasn't able to sleep. I felt kind of weird, but I chalked it up to just being awake late and traveling. At around 2 a.m., my oldest dog suddenly sits up, stiffens, and stares at the window that looks directly into the living room. I noticed that body position right away because he usually does that when he's frightened or sees somebody new. Except he isn't barking like he usually did. He was stiff, but shaking in a way that made me feel worried. My other dog notices and gets up and looks out the window too. Her ears go up and she becomes frozen, almost like a statue. I feel scared at this point, but I'm not sure why. Something felt really off at this point. My roommate gets up, and when he looks out the window, I see his eyes become wider than I had ever seen him before. I don't have my glasses on and it's dark, so I can't see anything. My roommate is frozen, looking out into the window. I ask, "What is it? Why is everyone looking out there?" My roommate is only able to make a scared muffle. I ask again, but louder and with more urgency. He looks at me and says, with a quiet voice, "You don't want to know," and then I then ask, "Is somebody in the house? Do I call 911? And then quickly remember setting the alarm to the house, which has motion sensors, and the door window alarms. My dogs are still stiff with fear, and my roommate looks back out the window. He tells me it's not human. At that point, I was freaking out, and I run to the window as fast as I could with my eyes shut, slammed the blinds down. I turn on the lights. My dogs and my roommate were still staring out the window. I asked him what he saw. He told me that there was a pale old man staring into the window straight at us. I asked him to describe the man, and he perfectly described my dead grandfather of 9 months. He had never seen my grandfather. He hated pictures, and I never had any around. After about 30 minutes of sheer panic, we decided to open the blinds again, 'cause why not? The man was gone. We did not sleep for the rest of the night. Maria came to me after a traumatic event I experienced in daycare. My memories of her are starting to fade, but I still remember enough, and when I came across the subreddit, I felt I should share. I've been putting this off because it is so hard to describe. I don't think I did justice, but I'm willing to explain more if anyone is curious. My main memory of Maria is talking to her in a hallway. We were both sitting and facing each other directly, and I was about to touch her hand. I can never erase that image from my mind. My mother and the daycare person talked once, and the lady told my mom that she thought I spoke with ghosts. Why? Because she's constantly talking to this ghost. My mom was freaked out, especially since I came home depressed often. Mind you, I was only 4 years old. I'll begin with her appearance. Half of her face was burned off, and it was still fresh. She tells me about this later. I didn't really pay attention to it. The other side of her face, I just remember, seemed so sad, to the point that looking at it, just the eye on the unburned side, made me cry. Now, what you're all wondering, what does a ghost look like? Yeah, I remember color, also less transparent. I could see her, but she was still semi-see-through, like a semi-transparent jellyfish almost. She was surprisingly still, but there was almost this outline around her that seemed to move. Thinking about it, she reminds me of the northern lights more than anything else. I can't think about it too long, or else I feel like I forget even more, or just get a bad headache. It's extremely hard to describe or even draw her, but I hope this is good enough explanation. If you have any questions or need clarification, I am happy to answer. Next up, language. We didn't even speak the same language. However, we understood each other. I knew what no meant, but that was the only word she spoke that I understood. You will soon wonder how we communicated. The answer is, I have no fucking clue. But I understood her, and she literally showed me things inside my mind, as if I were her. Things and smells that a child should have no understanding of. We understood each other without a language, and I do vaguely remember sitting in silence with her, just feeling but still understanding each other without a word. Now, I won't go into detail about what the trauma entailed, as it's very distressing. Remember, I was 4, but I remember speaking to her first. Well, she spoke first briefly, but then I spoke. All I remember is many tears and feeling so uncomfortable that I really wanted to die. I'm assuming this was about the traumatic event, which, by the way, is still mostly repressed. She soothed me. She took my mind off of it and comforted me as much as she could. Maybe she is the reason I was able to forget about repress the trauma and instead focused on her. If so, I am beyond grateful. Before I explain what she showed me after I told her everything, I want to make it clear how she showed me this. And this part still confuses me to this day. Was I possessed by her? If any experts know, I'd love to hear it. Basically, I saw it all in my head, but it wasn't like a reliving a memory. It was literally like I was her, feeling her emotions and her physical pain and smell and everything. She showed me her house. I don't really remember much detail about the house, but she showed me how she woke up literally moments before the fire came to her. For some reason, at this time, I knew a man not a name, just a man, had started the fire. I don't know why, but considering it was her gut feeling, I'm going to say that's what happened. You could already smell it, along with things starting to burn. The walls around her started to burn up, and she froze before trying to figure out how to escape. But when she tried, there was no way out. Her hair caught on fire first. It gets a little fuzzy, but she ended up on the ground screaming until the fire killed her. I didn't experience death itself, but I did experience relief of having her memory be over, as it was physically painful. Not near the extent of a real burn. I felt her burn without the fire. This is too hard to explain what exactly I felt physically and emotionally, so I will leave it at this. I have never messed with fire. I never have and never will. Maria and I spoke times after this, and as I mentioned before, at least one was just sitting in silence and feeling each other's emotions. But I don't remember much beyond that I told you. Beyond what I told you. We did sit and stare at each other once. I think I tried holding her hand once. Don't remember how that ended. I eventually left that place, and once my mother figured out what happened to me, I have been able to contact spirits afterward. Not to now, as it causes way too many problems and goes against my religion. You may be wondering, why am I reading an account of a 4-year-old? I'm not 4 anymore, obviously. But these memories were burned, if you will, into my memory. I cannot get her face out of my head. I wouldn't make something like this up. Some will argue a 4-year-old has an active imagination. That may be true, but I know what I saw, and it was very real. I can't just forget about it. I don't know why Maria came to me, but I actually considered her my first friend, as silly as that may sound. She comforted me and wasn't afraid to confide in me either. I have a huge headache, and my left ear hurts and making a weird low-pitched noises, so I'm stopping now. But I am open to questions, comments, needs for clarification. I'm also wondering how other people with first-hand ghost experiences will react to this. About a month ago, I started noticing footsteps and vibrations like someone was walking around my house. Now it has progressed to him constantly annoying me and pestering me to no end. I'm a 71-year-old non-vet that lives alone. I never believed in ghosts and such. I do know this thing is real as rain. I can't see him, but he aggravates the hell out of me. He's here most of the time now, and I can't get him to leave. He won't let me sleep in my bed. He vibrates it, shakes it, so I have to get up and go sleep on the couch. He's become pretty bold now. He vibrates the floors so much walking around I have to tell him to sit down and be quiet. He is so obvious now. I can tell exactly when he gets here. He makes unusual noises and sounds. I've never been afraid of him, but he's creeped me out a couple times. I've tried being nice to him, but that doesn't work. I cursed at him like hell now because I just don't care. That doesn't seem to work either. I need him to leave me alone and get the hell out of my house and never come back. There's a lot more I could say about him. It just seems like his only purpose is to pester and harass me every day, and I have had it. This is the craziest thing I have ever witnessed. It was fascinating at first, but it's got me mad as hell now. Can't stop him. He comes and goes as he pleases, and I can't do anything about it. He won't listen to me. He's here right now, and I just hate his ass so much. I have nothing else to try. I'll pay somebody that can help me get rid of him. He's got to go one way or another. I was happy before he came. I won't be happy until he leaves. When I, 23 now, was around 8 years old, I was staying at a friend's house. We were sleeping upstairs. In the middle of the night, I wake up to the theme song of What's New, Scooby-Doo, which I hadn't heard it, and it's very catchy. It might be normal during a children's sleepover, but the problem is, it was like at 1 a.m. I could just barely hear it, like it was down the hall. At first I assumed it was just my brain because I'm tired. And I can hear music very clearly in my head anyways. But the theme song just kept playing over and over. No interruptions. And if it was in my head, I wouldn't have been able to play the entire theme out anyways, because I didn't know it that well. I would have gotten distracted by another song at some point, but it played in its entirety and repeated. I laid in the dark for like 20 minutes, completely distracted because I knew at this point it's not just in my head, because I was actively thinking of other songs, and I could still faintly but clearly hear the theme song. So I snooped around the house, still hearing the song at the same level. There's not a single TV on in the entire house. I was baffled. So I just tried going to sleep, and eventually it just stopped, as if someone shut off the TV. I couldn't hear it. When I thought of hearing it, it sounded completely different in my head. It was like someone threw up a 1-hour repeat of this theme song, and then after a while shut it off. I have a few more paranormal experiences with moving objects and such, but never before since I have experienced a song poltergeist. Has anyone else experienced something like this? I almost wish it would happen again so I can feel what I was feeling back then one more time. My parents found a 3-bedroom house with a large kitchen, dining area, living room, TV room, and even a sunroom for a little over a couple hundred a month in rent. This was a steal even back in the early 90s. My mom was pregnant with me, and my parents were anxious to get out of the tiny apartment they were living in. Of course, they jumped on this and moved in as quickly as possible. Right away, my mother started experiencing weird phenomenon around the house. The cliche feeling like you're being watched, never feeling alone even though you were alone, and just things you could not brush off. This quickly picked up into things that weren't so easily to pass, such as one day, not long after moving in, my mom had a couple family members over showing them the house. They were in what was to be my room. Since I was not born yet, my closet was pretty empty, and my parents had stored completely empty boxes from the move into my closet until they could get a truck to haul them away. My closet was a walk-in closet, small one, but still plenty of room to stack 2 rows of boxes, one in front of the other, and completely shut the door. And the boxes be at least 6 to 7 inches away from the door. As my mom was talking to her visitors in the room, their conversations were completely cut off as the closet door flew open, and just about every single one of those boxes came flying out of the closet, scattering all over the floor. Mind you, these were completely empty cardboard boxes. Even if they had somehow managed to fall against the door, there is no way they could have opened the door with such force. My mom told me it was as if someone was in the closet standing behind the rows of boxes and hit them with superhuman strength. My mom says they were all pale as ghosts, speechless, and pretty much ran out of the room after this. Things continued to escalate after that day. My room never truly was my room due to me being absolutely terrified of it. It appeared that the activity in the house stemmed from my room, and it all started with the first encounter. I have many more stories from this house I'd like to share. I was born in the early 90s. My parents were married in 1991, and I was born in 1992. For the first bit of my parents' marriage, they lived in a tiny apartment that needed a lot of work. When my mom found out that she was pregnant with me, finding a better home with more space moved to the top of their to-do list. My mom was about 7 months along with me, and every house they had looked at had fallen through, until one, the one, It was located out in the middle of nowhere in our little town. But that's exactly what my parents wanted. It was a 2, could be 3 bedroom and 1 bath house. It had 2 enclosed porches, massive kitchen, dining area, and living room. The best part was the rent was just barely over the amount my parents were paying monthly for this tiny rundown apartment. While this wasn't a beachside luxury mansion, it was everything my parents wanted and then some. Of course, they jumped at this offer. It did not take long after moving in for the weirdness to start. Activity made itself known pretty much from day one. This experience in particular, I can remember even though I was only about 3 or 4 years old. Halloween has almost been a major holiday for my family. My parents decided to host their first annual Halloween party in this house. It was a huge success. Tons of family and friends attended. They had music, food, games, costume contest. I remember I was Baby Bop from Barney. And the best part, a fake haunted house in the garage that set apart from the house. After it was over, my mom's 2 sisters and her middle sister's boyfriend decided to sleep over instead of making that hour-long drive back home so late. My parents made the living room, which was in between my parents' room and what was considered my room, as cozy as they could. About 2 a.m., we said our goodnights, and I followed my parents to their room to crash, as I was absolutely terrified of my room. I remember waking up to the sound of someone knocking on my parents' closed bedroom door. My dad was dead to the world, so my mom got up to answer it. I heard the frantic voice of my older aunt asking where my dad was. My mom opened the door more so she could see my dad completely knocked out in the bed. My aunt's voice became even more pleading as she asked if I could all move into their room and sleep in the floor. My mom agreed, as my aunt swore she would explain in the morning. I remember how excited I was to see my aunt and future uncle move their bedding in the small bedroom to sleep. It was my first sleepover in my young mind. Come morning, or later in the morning, I should say, we would find out what exactly happened. My aunt said after everyone had went to bed and the lights were out, they started hearing movement coming from my room. At first, it sounded like footsteps walking around the room. Then it started sounding like someone was moving stuff around. It got louder, like someone was digging through my toy box. Both my aunt and my future uncle were on alert listening to this when creepy music started playing. They realized it was my music my dollhouse would play, only when you push a special button. They were convinced my dad was behind this, as he is notorious for playing pranks on people. That's when my aunt ran and knocked on my parents' bedroom door to see if it was somehow his doing. When my mom showed her he was sound asleep, she said it felt like her heart stopped as she could still hear movement coming from my room on the other side of the living room. After this, the experiences in the house got worse, and it was a very long time before my aunt and uncle would even visit again. Just days after this, my parents said I came running to them late one evening and was completely inconsolable. I said in between sobs that there was a mean face glaring at me through the living room window, this window being in the same area my family had ran from. These are just a few experiences from this wicked house. I have plenty more I'd love to share in the future. My first experience. I grew up in South Jersey. The neighborhood's property directly next to me was owned by the Emperor and Empress of Philippine Islands, Ferdinand Marcos. One August night, I came home for dinner. I may be 12. This guy is lying next to the running lawnmower, dead. Really nice guy, too. Always so friendly to us. A year later, about the same time, it's dead quiet in the house. Dad's in Rochester on business, and my mom goes to bed after she says prayers over me and my sister. But not even 5 minutes later, someone plays piano, walks across the linoleum floor, opens the French doors, closes the French doors, and starts walking up the stairs. But no one's there. My sister's asleep at this time. My mom walks down the hall, staring down the stairs, turns to me and says, "Was that you?" I shake my head, and she didn't go down the stairs either. My second experience was my mom's friend at the time. This was when I was about 14. Worked for the governor's office in PA. We went to her house for Thanksgiving dinner. The house they lived in was over 200 years at that time. As soon as we got to the house, we heard footsteps and doors slamming upstairs. Come to find out later, there is nobody else in the house, just us. Throughout the night, people were poked. Hair was tugged by a little girl ghost. A mean dad ghost whispered, "Get out of my house." And when we were eating, it got really wild. Someone's hair was getting flicked, but I left the dinner. After I left dinner, I refused to go back inside. I felt like someone kept watching me. My third ghost experience was I set up a Ring camera in my garage last Christmas of 21-22. I had just gotten it and set it up to test and play with. I go back a few days later online to check out the quality. Mind you, this is Christmas Eve, and I have a 3-year-old. So the video starts as my wife and I went to the garage for presents. But then the video goes fuzzy, and a large orb flies out of the camera. My wife turns, and the orb comes out of her shoulder. A little kid's voice says, in a questioning way, 2 or 3 more orbs drop out of the ceiling and fly across the room. And you will not believe it, y'all. I lost the freaking video. I am so angry. I did not know at the time Ring only saves for 60 days, and the video I downloaded, that laptop crapped out on me. But it was a very cool capture. I'm very sad that I lost the video footage. But I will try again. So, I used to have tons of little paranormal experience up until I turned 18. Then they just stopped. Nothing for nearly 20 years. Then about 6 months ago, I started getting super interested in the paranormal again. And I've been either reading people's experiences here or listening to podcasts, and things have started to happen again. I believe the more attention you give to the paranormal, even by reading about others' experiences, can give them enough energy to interact with you. Some backstory before I get into my latest happenings. I started dating my wife in 2009. We moved into our house in 2010 to 2011. Her family owned it before us, so she grew up in it basically. They always believed there was a presence in the house, but apart from a dumb teenage girl moment with a friend claiming to be sensitive or another girl claiming to see something, no real experiences ever happened. But as adults, when we moved in, we always sensed something there. Not really malevolent, but powerful enough of a presence to put you, and sometimes also company, at unease. But for literally a decade, 0 actual experiences. Nothing unexplainable, even when talking about the paranormal or even making jokes and subconsciously trying to stir something up out of sheer curiosity. Then in 2020, we separate and I move out. In this new place, I occasionally feel a small presence. I chalk it up to either imagination or maybe there's someone watching over me. Who really knows what's there, which we can't see? We can only speculate. Now cut to 6 months ago, when I start to get super drawn to the paranormal again. I began reading people's story literally every night in bed as I wind down to sleep. In my story, before I shared here about my experiences with the Black Horseman, I mentioned when I talked about the paranormal, it seemed to, as I call it, stir shit up. As in if you give them attention, they would feed off the energy enough to actually interact with you somehow. Now that I'm giving more attention to this world we know so little about, once again, it seems the same thing is happening all over again. I'm starting to feel the presence much stronger. Weird for sure, but I continue. Then around October, I have a new experience. I was in the basement bedroom, only 2 floors. The stairs there ridiculously loud. You can always hear them, even over the TV or music. Even when you try to be sneaky, they're just damn loud. One morning about 6:18 a.m., I remember exactly, because my morning ritual is I wake up for any other roommate, get dressed and relax on the couch playing on my phone until 6:30 a.m. when I walk out to leave for work, all before any roommate wakes up for their routine. I am in my room, sitting on my couch, looking at my phone, waiting on time to leave. Dead silence in the entire house. Sitting on the couch in my room, facing my opened bedroom door, suddenly I hear the loud creaky stairs as something slowly walks down to the basement. All 13 steps. I think this is very odd as I watch the doorway into the hall. There's no reason for anyone upstairs to come down here. They have their own bathroom up there. Nobody gets up before me, but I think maybe it's a roommate coming to talk to me before I leave. I wait a good 1 to 2 minutes. No sounds, no lights turn on or off, the same loud steps back upstairs. Then the weird part. If anyone is walking upstairs, I hear them at all times. The floor is really loud and creaky. So if someone goes upstairs, you immediately hear them walking away after they get off the steps. This time, I immediately only heard silence after the steps up, which is impossible. I even tested it with a roommate later that day. Also, when I came home, I asked each roommate if they were up during that specific time frame. You guessed it, they were not. I did everything in my power to explain it away. There is zero logic to disprove it. I tried. Next experience. I and my ex-wife are still friends. She still is in our old house. We're getting ready to sell it and move to another state. Her to a new state with a new boyfriend, and I to my home state. So we decided, since her roommates are moving out and we work to get it ready to sell, I would come move back in since I'd be there so often anyways, and we get along well enough. Immediately, the presence in this house is stronger than I've ever felt before. I left it every night. I'm still reading and listening to stories and podcasts in bed. Getting very creeped out, dumb and brave. I continue anyways. One evening, I go with my ex-wife to help do janitorial services at a church for a mutual friend, which she does on occasion for some side cash. She's been doing so for months and asked me to come along this time because she hates going there alone, because she thinks it's haunted and she gets spooked out. There's a specific room she hates and feels like there's always a presence in that room, and it makes her extremely uneasy. A friend was hanging out with us and decided to tag along, so we get there, and she asked me to handle that room because I don't rattle easily. So she's in the bathrooms, the friend is just standing in the hallway talking to us, and I'm in the hall running an extension cord, and I walk past the door to that particular room. I looked at our friend as he turns sheet white and says as I walk past it, the door slowly opened, even though it was locked solid. I had literally just barely asked wifey to come unlock it for me so I could vacuum it. So I know for a fact it was just locked. Take this as you will. Just a door coming unlatched or paranormal. But it felt unlikely it just unlatched, as it is a heavy solid built door with a sturdy lock. They lock every door in this church for whatever reason. Anyway, I tried recording some audio in the room alone a couple of times hoping to catch something. But I have captured nothing so far. I'll keep trying whenever I get a chance. I also say, you're not allowed to follow us home or attach yourself to us, and you're not allowed to feed off our energy before we leave the church every time. Third experience. First week of December, the ex-wife is gone out of town with her new boyfriend, leaving me alone in the house for a couple months. A buddy of mine who is pretty sensitive to spirits and such is visiting, and we end up talking about the paranormal, and I bring up the strong presence here, which has felt significantly stronger since being alone. He mentions he felt something watching us from the kitchen the whole time that evening, and nervously changed subject. That night, I go to bed, read some stories here, get all spooked out and get sleepy, put my phone on the charger, turn off the lights, and lay down. I'm still very much awake. After only about a minute or two since turning off the lights, when I feel something clear as can be pat on the bed next to my foot, as if someone took their open palm and just firmly went, pat, pat, pat. I am most definitely alone in this house. There's no way it was a person. I calmly said, do not mess with me while I'm in bed, and you are not allowed to feed off my energy, and please respect my home and my boundaries, and tried not to freak out as I tucked a blanket under my body as if it was a protective shield, and eventually went to sleep. After that, I don't read the spookies every night anymore. Shit needs to calm down until I am at least not home alone. Here I am, typing this at midnight when I should be going to sleep, home alone still. So, I guess we'll see if I have another one to report soon. On August 9th, 2016, my family was on vacation and took a tour of the Washoe Club in Virginia City. While at the bottom of the stairs, my sister was filming around the corner. It wasn't spotted on location, but after leaving, it appears that she unintentionally recorded what looks like a young girl at the second to last steps at the top of the stairs. While observing it very carefully, you can even see the figure slightly moving what may be its arms up and down. Not only that, but on the right side past the stairs, there may also be a small floating gray mist in the form of a hand becoming the figure. I say beckoning because in some other photos taken that was unfortunately no longer were saved, that's what it appears to be doing. I have a short clip of it. Edit. For clarification, I'm not outright saying this is a paranormal at all. It's just a fun image I wanted to share. Is all from a well-known, supposedly haunted place. Also, the ghost hand I mentioned is aligned with the top third stair to the right to the photo is super grainy and much harder to see compared to other photos we used to have. So much so that I probably shouldn't have bothered mentioning it. Regardless, that's just what it looked like to me. Second edit. The photo will be here. I will place it. I should have mentioned as well, I was not there at the time. This was all taken by a family member. I only just posted thinking people might like it. Thank you. This just happened. It was about 12:45 a.m. I was driving down one of the main roads in my hometown after hanging out with my friends. As I was driving back, I was passing by store outlets. I saw a group of what looked like teenagers standing around on the side of the road. I squinted my eyes trying to get a better view, not believing that there were a group of teens on the side of the road. As I got closer, I saw one of their arms shoot up as if they were trying to flag me down. But knowing that this is not the greatest idea to be picking up hitchhikers, especially at nearly 1 in the morning, I kept moving, driving past as I was confused based on what I had just seen. Out of curiosity, I stopped at the light nearby and made a U-turn to take a second look. I wasn't gonna go back and offer them a ride, because that just spells danger. But I wanted to mentally confirm that what I saw was real. However, when I went back, they were gone. Though I didn't want to seem like a creeper, I turned into the parking lot right behind where they were standing, see if they gave up and walked away. After driving around the lot for 5 minutes, I didn't see a singular person, nor did I see a teenager for that matter. I decided to call it a night as I witnessed something that woke me up enough to send me straight back home. The uncanny part of it was, I was only a lane over while they were standing on the shoulder. So you'd think I would be able to make out facial features, but I don't recall even seeing their faces, just figures. Hello everyone, my story is from last week. Me and my girlfriend went to a hotel in Czech German border. I'm Czech and she's German. And we had a room 106. The room was nice. There was a picture of the hotel above the bed. First night we sleep and suddenly there was a loud bang during the night. We woke up not knowing what the fuck that was. My heart raced and it was the first night. I didn't even know where I am. Then my girlfriend remembered the New Year's is close, so it might have been fireworks outside. But when I noticed that the picture from the wall fell and stopped on the headboard of the bed, which wasn't touching the wall, it was 4:44 a.m. We went to pee and slept until morning. When we woke up, I put the picture back on the wall. We hiked that day and later came back to the hotel room, turned on the wall and sat down. Then my girlfriend mentioned the picture and the light began to flicker. The moment she mentioned it, that freaked us out a bit. So I went to the picture. I waited. I watched the light flicker. In the exact moment I touched the frame, the light went normal, like a fucking light switch. After that, we didn't use the light again, and the picture was taken down. We planned to go back and buy some night vision cameras and see the place while we sleep. It was creepy. I'm a security officer. I just recently got a job at an emergency shelter doing the graveyard shift. I am convinced that this building is haunted. I researched that it was built in the 1912 and it was taken over by my company in 2015, about 7 years since they have had it. When I first started, I didn't feel any way about it until I got this unnerving feeling 2 months in. In my gut, there was a feeling of being watched by someone, something unseen. I felt uneasy, feeling like I couldn't relax or go to sleep on my break time, which I took around 5:30 a.m. to 6:30 a.m. There is a weird vibe in the unit day or night that they use for a break room. Also a case manager office during the day. I haven't encountered anything supernatural, but I believe spirits are there, and I witnessed 3 things I saw from the corner of my eye. Number 1, one day at my desk, garbage lid shook as if someone placed something in it. Number 2, I saw the bathroom door in the unit move. Window was barely open and there wasn't any wind. The window is between buildings. Number 3, also on the CCTV camera, one morning, 12/2/22 at 16 a.m., I witnessed the attendance sheets. The residents' sign to go in and out, sheet on the platform attached to the door flipped up in the air and stayed that way on the clipboard for about 2 minutes until I put them back in their original position. Yes, I was spooked, and I knew the other papers that was on the wall nearby did not move that swiftly. If there was a wind, they would have all reacted that way. I spent 2 months in this break room before anyone told me anything, all alone from 5:30 to 6:30 a.m., and let's include on my patrols, I used to go in the unit to vape in the bathroom. That's why I liked it, because I had privacy. Well, I thought I did. They all said the same thing when I told them the feeling of fear. I don't want to take breaks there anymore. They said, yep, upstairs is creepy. People note they're always complaining about being cold in the hot building that has old radiator poles and portable heater they turn on. But I know the cold, hot feeling of a strange presence when I feel it. As of 12/06/22, I am still working here, and I am still feeling uneasy every day, and I do everything to avoid the break room, the basement, and empty unit by myself. This one staff member told me she was one day in the eerie break room and heard someone call her name, and no one was there in the small unit, and now she doesn't go there anymore. There is also a very spooky alarm clock in the case manager office in the eerie break room that goes off exactly at 11:04 p.m. Case manager doesn't even work at night, so what's the alarm for? Every night I got in to go to the locker room as if it was waiting for me or something. Yep, it goes off every night in the unit non-stop, and the noise of a mouse running around. They also had a rat infestation from the next door building. There are a lot of rats running around the yard. Everything is just creepy. I noticed a sweet smell like air freshener, and there isn't one plugged in. Another staff and I was wondering what the smell was. I for a second possibly thought it could be an entity because the smell comes and goes. There is also this other familiar, distinctive smell of a vape flavor, which it smells like not the same flavor I'm currently using on the floor of the break room. I haven't even gone there. It's been a week now. Like, is this thing sending smells to get attention as well? 12/06/22 to 4:04 a.m. Sitting at front desk, not even near entrance, and sensor door makes noises. After someone has entered, out, exited, no one is there. Sitting at the front desk again all alone. 2 other staff in the department room and 2 inside a room. They are sleeping. I witnessed with my very own eyes the garbage lid move again from its place it's been, and for hours swing closed. I was frightened because it's not the first time it happened, but the first time I caught it. I will be considering a transfer soon if things doesn't settle. I don't think I'm strong enough to work in a place knowing it's haunted. 12/23/22 update. Things have settled down. I still heard a door slam. No door slammed with footsteps coming from the stairwells and hallway, and no one is on the khaki. Of course, I have already told the energy that it is not welcome around me. I began to wear protective colors such as red bracelets, olive oil, spiritual baths, and I also played gospel music during my patrol through the building. I've started noticing this white pigeon at night across the bathroom window I use as if it is observing me. I feel a sense of peace when I see a white bird, but he also has a black. I don't know that it could be a sign to keep my faith. Time to time, the garbage bin fixes itself, and I still hear footsteps on the first floor main entrance in the hallway by the front security desk at night. I look up to see no one. One time, the door sensor sounded as if someone came in or out. Honestly, I just don't care to get to know what it is, but I love reading the other person's paranormal here on Reddit. So, I'm sure some of y'all say what I'm saying is fake, but I promise it's not. I've always been akin to the spirit realm. For an example, when I play a Ouija board, not a very good idea, I know, the board is always unresponsive until I play. Like when others are playing, it doesn't reply, or it responds in gibberish. My mom has asked it before if it wanted me to play, and the planchette immediately went to yes. Anyway, I should probably talk about when it all started. It started when I was about 7 years old, living in an old house. We caught an orb on camera, and it wasn't a dust speck because it was moving irregularly. I would always hear things talking to me in a loud whisper, and one of the only experiences that truly terrified me is as following. I would always have a radio on at night, and a commercial came on. This so-called commercial was filled with people screaming in a deep, droning voice saying things I couldn't understand. It could have been just a horror movie, but I've never heard of it from anyone else. Another thing that I learned from my mom had happened was when I was at school. My toys would move from upstairs in my room to the bottom of the stairs. I also remember my brother sleeping in my bed with me a lot of times, but whenever I talk about it now, neither my mom or brother remember that ever happening, and I don't know if this counts, but when I walked past this one certain house, something inside me was telling me to never look at it. Don't ever acknowledge the house. The house had a bunch of religious things on the porch, and I always got an evil vibe from it. Another night, I was looking out my window, and under the streetlight, I saw a little girl dressed in a white nightgown, and when she looked up at me, she disappeared. Then we moved out of that house. We moved to a different town with my mom's boyfriend, and this is kind of when things took off in terms of spiritual encounters. I would be laying in bed, and again, I'd hear the whisper yells. It was always happening each night, and one night I was so scared I ran to my mom's room. I had to go into the basement, and all the while the voices talking to me got louder and more aggressive. I don't hear voices anymore, so I'm not schizophrenic. I would be laying in bed, and my bed would violently shake. And when I went to my brother, because I was scared, because I was a scared kid, his bed would start to shake. Then the water faucet would drip, and I'd go out and check it, but the sink was dry. Another experience I had, we were watching a movie in the living room when I saw something pass in front of the window. I asked them if they saw it, and none of them did. Then, when we moved out, we moved to my grandpa's house. And this is a very old house. It's been in our family since probably the 1800s. So there's a lot of history and probably spirits. I'd hear something crawling in my vents, and I'd hear something or someone walking around in the attic. Also, this happened years after we first lived there, but it still happened at my grandpa's house. I had my door locked, and I heard a Big Wheels toy roll up to my door. We don't own a single Big Wheels. My door then opened, and something crawled into bed with me. Another experience was when I got up to go to the bathroom, and something was on the other side of the door preventing me from opening it. I've grown used to the paranormal. So I just pushed as hard as I could and got the door open. But something slammed it shut again. I didn't try to open it again. And just the other day, I was gaming with my door open and saw something white approach my door frame. I looked at it, and it disappeared. My cats were in my room, so maybe that's what prevented it from coming in my room. In another town we lived in, the dishwasher started up by itself. I saw some black figure on the top of my fan blades, and a music box started playing by itself. My closet door had also slammed shut by itself on multiple occasions. Then again, in a different town, I had 2 different rooms in our apartment over the time we lived there. In my first room, I was lying in bed when I felt water drip onto my forehead. I touched my forehead. It was dry. I touched the ceiling. Dry. Then I was getting water another night, and it was around 2 in the morning. I hear my mother call out my name, but it was so obviously not my mother. Something about her voice was off. I stopped in my tracks, not leaving the room, and I saw a black figure slink back into her room. In the other room I was in, I was laying in bed, and I heard something from the dark part of the room call my name. Another time, when I was walking past my room, I saw a figure walk from my closet to my doorway. Then in another room, there were fairy lights that could only be turned on by flipping the switch. And none of us went into the room out of respect for the girl who used it. The lights were on. A different time, I heard my cats play with their toys in the living room. The only thing is that I had all my cats in my room with me. This other time, I was playing the Ouija board with a friend on Halloween. One of my friends heard me say something to him, but I didn't say anything. And a different time, I was driving home with my mom and saw the same little girl in a white nightgown in front of the neighbor's lawn in broad daylight. All in all, I've had quite a few terrifying experiences with spirits. They always stop bugging me when I ask them to. They always come back, and none of my other family members experience this. I've always been able to hear and see things that others can't. I've been told by my priest, I had never met him, that I have an angelic glow around me. People immediately feel at ease around me, and oftentimes strangers will tell me what's bothering them in their life out of the blue. I'm not quite sure what this is, but I just know I have a connection to the spirit realm. I don't need help exorcising the spirit. I've become fond of him. I named him Peter as a child, and the name stuck. I really just needed to get this out to people who would believe me and listen to me. If you read this the entire way through, thank you for taking the time out of your life to listen to me. Any insight as to what it is or why I have such a connection to the spirit world would be much appreciated. Thank you so much. First of all, English is not my native language, and I'll try my best. Second, my friend does not use Reddit or has ever posted anything about this, but he's very open to talk about it. I really trust him. I know he's more sensitive to things, and I'm a very skeptical guy, atheist and so, but I really think there's truth to his story, so I try to tell what I know, because it gives me chills every single time. So, when he was around 20, he moved to a new apartment in the center, Madrid, with his girlfriend and friend. They were all students. This avenue had a massacre on it during the Spanish Civil War. Like a slaughter, Franco's army entered every house after the bombings, and God knows what they did to everyone. Anyway, he moved there. First day moving. They just put all the boxes inside of the house, all set up, so after the hard work they decided to go celebrate and eat something outside. This is a very old building. So when they go out, an old woman asked if they were all family of the owners who used to live there. She said a woman and her son lived there. We had no clue what she was talking about. When they came back from lunch, every closet, every door was opened, but no one was in there. So who opened all the doors? And they say there was a room that smelled very bad, like rotten. That some nights the kitchen was like if someone was there opening, closing the fridge doors, whatever. One night, he was sleeping with his girlfriend, and someone entered their bedroom, like someone who was coming home from work, and then they turned on the light, like just living their life. And my friend's girlfriend was tired of it, so she went and screamed, "What do you want from us?" Suddenly all the doors that were open started to close abruptly, like when you're mad and you close the door. He says a couple of times he saw a young guy with a mustache, and his girlfriend used to see a woman all the time. They invited friends to the house, but one guy never came back, and he seemed like something spooked him, like he saw something, and he wanted to leave. He told me these things, and not long ago, there was a paranormal TV show at night. That day, they talked about a house. Guess where? The same avenue, and I thought this must be it. What is more scary for me is the rotten smell in one of the rooms that no one wanted to go in. Anyway, he had a couple of encounters, more not related to the house, and I don't know if I should post them here. I never had any experiences with the paranormal, but this really fascinates me. But like I said, I'm very skeptical. Hi all. The weird Keanu Reeves ghost guy post brought me and my family to this sub and got me thinking. My mom and stepdad live in my childhood home with my younger brother and sister who are in their 20s. They're all convinced that there is a ghost in the house. We were the first family to live in the home, built in like 98, but my stepdad's sister tragically passed not long after my mom and him had met, so there is some potential there. I will say in the years I lived at home, from about 98 to 2007, I personally never encountered anything really weird, but I have always been skeptical, and after I moved out, they say they've heard and seen things repeatedly. It's a 2-story house, so usually it's just footsteps on the stairs when no one is up there, or voices coming from upstairs when no one is there. Just this week, I was visiting my mom while picking up my son, who she watches during the week, and there was a loud thud right above us. She said, "See, there's the ghost." I wrote her off because there is a heater right in that area and a closet upstairs, although it wasn't running at the time. But I will admit to being present when all of us heard what sounded like someone coming down the stairs when no one was up there. It was a very distinct sound, the way the house creaks when someone is walking, and you would recognize it just from living there. Anyways, I got to the point. She has this Blink home security system, so today I had her order the interior mini camera to put upstairs so we can finally try and catch anything that could be moving around up there. Anyone got any tips? The camera has motion activation and night vision. I have the Blink system too, and the camera quality and night vision are pretty damn good. So if something is moving up there, we should be able to catch it. I'll be sure to post any findings on the sub as a follow-up. Personally, they've had rodents in the walls previously, so I think it's either that or just the heater house resting. My mom swears it moves around, and my sister's boyfriend, who occasionally spends the night, said he heard voices the other night. A few nights ago, my husband and I were just sitting in bed, playing around on our phones. We have a roommate that stays in the area that is separated from us, with blankets hung from the ceiling. So basically, our place is one large room and one small room. That's the bathroom storage room. The large room we stay in is L-shaped room, partitioned off into 3 areas. One is our roomies area, ours, and then the kitchen type area. We were in our little area chilling. He was asleep in his area, and the kitchen area had the only light on in the house. Where the light is located, so if something were to walk between us and the light, it will cast a very defined shadow directly on the blankets we had as a partition. I noticed at first just a shadow in the shape of a person slowly walk from left to right, and then about 30 seconds later, it goes from right to left straight for where our roommate was asleep. I looked at my husband, tapped his leg. "Did you see that?" I whispered. "Yeah, human shape, but where's Dude, our cat?" That would have been him going over to the couch. "I don't think so. That didn't limp like Dude. Dude has 3 legs, so his walk is very noticeable in the shadows. Plus, there was no sounds of steps or clawing onto the couch. Dude is not graceful." Just as I finished the sentence, a full human-shaped shadow just slowly started forming, making the shadow look clearer and darker. You could literally see the head, torso, and arms slightly away from the body, as if a person was standing right there. And as our eyes went to the floor, we could see what appeared to be 2 shadow legs at the bottom, completely black, not defined or separated. It was like a pant leg to boots. And with that, my husband and I started yelling to our roommate, "Hey Randy, wake up. Is anyone in there with you?" "Only Dude, but he's on my bed. Why?" So we told him what we saw. His response, "Yep, I know that unfamiliar spirit." And that was it. Nothing else happened for the rest of the night. Also, I wanted just to add that this happened at 4:45 a.m. Thanks. I've been hearing a lot of things around my house after everyone has gone to bed. I also see these figures just watching me when it's dark. Gotten to the point where I am scared of my own home. Nobody else in my family seems to acknowledge my problem with the house, as we've had it for over 15 years and nobody has lived in it before us. My mom used to tell me it was just the house settling, but I've heard footsteps and whispers and giggles. Mind you, everyone else in the house is asleep right now. Multiple times we left the house with all the lights off and returned to some lights on. While taking out the trash at night, I've seen figures around the corners of the house watching me again and again. I've woken up to a little girl giggling and asking me to play while it's still dark. I've woken up to the voice of a man. Again, sometimes in the middle of the night, I've had terrible nightmares in the house, and some of them are about the house, but I could also just be seeing and hearing things. I stay up late and listen to loud music, so that could be the root of the problem. I guess I'd feel safer if I knew for sure what was up with my house.
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through ice covered in ink and bleach. Cross